So you want to be the creator and the designer of your life and have time for all of the important things. And you've heard about Parkinson's law or the Pareto principle or Pomodoro. And it's just starting to feel like, how do you actually implement these things? And so you just want the simple step by step. Step one, you do this. Step two, you do this. An easy, sustainable time management principle for people who sometimes are lazy, sometimes they're unmotivated, sometimes they procrastinate. You know, they're not productivity robots. So in this video, I'm going to show you the next step that you can take to level up your time management. So before I get into the 5 levels of time management, I want to talk about what actually is time management. So time management is the ability to get things done in an effective and productive way. Basically, if you think about how you manage your time, you want a density and a richness with time, like a richness to life. And so it's creating a life that you love. So time management is not just about, getting a lot of stuff done that you don't really like in a short amount of time, being quick. It's not really about a quantity of things, but it's about maintaining and designing a quality of life so that you can be the architect, the creator of your time. I like to think of time management less from like a scientific frame with these methods, but to think about it more from an artist's point of view. I want a little bit of this in my life and a little bit of this paint and a little bit of this color, and I design and I kind of combine these things to create this rich, beautiful life that I love. And so when you set the intention to create and be the author of your time, then you can be so much more satisfied with the results. You can, at the end of the day, feel relaxed that you got everything done and feel like you did the things that really mattered to you. So the way this video is going to work is I have designed 5 levels of time management because I just did a survey on my channel on the community tab, if you didn't know that. I did a survey about what people's questions were about time management and what are your typical complaints with normal productivity content, time management content. And the results were just all over the place. Some people thought things were too basic. Some people thought things were too difficult. And so I realized that there's a lot of different levels that I started to see in this survey. So in this video, I'm going to divide it into the 5 levels of time management. So, you can start at level 1, and if you feel like you're at level 1, what's the one step that'll take you to level 2? And if you're at level 2, what's the one step that'll take you to level 3? Now, this is building a foundation. So if you feel that you're pretty advanced with time management, you're still going to want to watch the levels that precede it because they build on each other, these levels, as they go. So I want to start at the very bottom level, step 1 with time management. This is the group of people that I'm calling kind of the sloth category. And I think everyone has been at this spot at different points in their life. It's not like this upward trajectory that you go up and up and up and you never go down. It's kind of up and you go down, you go up and you go down. And at any given time, even if you're predominantly maybe at level 4, you have times when you're at level 1. So level 1, the sloth, is kind of characterized by apathy, lack of motivation, lack of energy. You just don't feel that you can do anything. And a lot of times people in this group don't feel that they even need time management because, they're not juggling a lot. A lot of times once you get to the level where you're juggling more things, then you start to feel a need for time management. But when you're at this level, you're like, well, I'm not very busy. I'm not really doing much. I go to work and I come home and I'm feeling really lethargic and depressed. And then I'm on the internet for the next several hours and then I go to bed. And so you don't feel like a need for time management. But time management is providing a richness to your life. And so there's definitely a need at this level to have more richness in your life, to have more. What's so hard about this level is that it's a cycle of avoidance. And a lot of times when we procrastinate or we don't feel like doing something, it's because we don't love the thing. And you have to ask yourself, do I really love this thing? And a lot of times these negative emotions, which people don't talk about in time management a lot, but a lot of times these negative emotions are a message. And those emotions are telling you need to make a change in circumstances or the people that you're around or the job that you're doing. And a lot of times it's a message that you need to make a big change. Now, people don't want to do that. So the coping mechanism is, I'm just going to avoid it. And then when you avoid, it creates kind of this anxiety and this restlessness. So then you need to have a numbing out mechanism, which could be, being on social media a lot or something. And so then instead of, making the change, you're just like, okay, I'll just kind of dampen everything down. I'll just hold here, not really do anything. And it's just this compounding cycle. More anxiousness and more avoidance. So for this group of people that really feel like it's an emotional issue, the number one thing is to figure out what are those emotions telling you and what change do you need to make. And you don't need to make a big sweeping change. It might not be a big change, but just in little steps, figuring out what do you love. Even if you don't feel like, maybe you feel that the change you need to make is your job, but you feel like, okay, I can't do that right now. That's too big of a change. Instead of figuring out what's that negative thing in your life that you don't really have that much control over, what do you have control over? And that is your free time, like after work, let's say. So the action steps for this group are to experiment and figure out what hobbies that you like, bring some more life and joy into your life instead of kind of this slothfulness. The point of time management is designing a rich life. So at this point, it's to kind of experiment with what might that richness be. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm going to experiment and try to figure that out. From a logistical time management perspective, the other thing I want you to implement is not having what's called a silent to-do list. So a silent to-do list is basically just you have these things in your head that you know that you need to do, and you kind of just keep reminding yourself like, oh, I don't want to forget that I need to call her back. Oh, I don't want to forget I need to call her back. And then, you keep reminding yourself. It's silent, it's in your head, unseen. And what you want to do is bring that out on paper. So at the very least, when you have something in your head, you want to put that on paper, because a lot of anxiety is just caused by our brain not being able to organize the massive amounts of information that are coming in. But on paper, when you can see things and you get things out in the open, then all of a sudden your brain has a lot more capacity to deal with those. So get rid of the silent to-do list. That's just the most basic thing that you can do. And if you want kind of an extra credit step, I would track your time. And I will have a template linked in the description, a free template of like a weekly spread. And so what I want you to do is just track your time, Sunday through Saturday, and just figure out, how are you spending your time? Where is that time going? And what things are adding richness and what things are not? How much time is there stagnancy? And I think that shame is a big factor whenever you're in a period of kind of like slothfulness. Like I think back to like time periods when I've been especially depressed. And one thing that was really helpful to me is there's this concept called the second arrow. You think of like a bow and arrow analogy. The first arrow is, you had some adverse life experience that made you kind of depressed, let's say. The second arrow is the one that we shoot at ourselves, and we say things like, I really should be over this right now. How come I'm still in this spot? I really need to stop. And that guilt and that shame really compounds things. And so what was started because of an adverse life experience, then the bigger issue then becomes the shame and the self-talk. So I think at this level, it's really just about gentleness and about saying, it's okay. Anyone who's in my experience would have done the same thing. Anyone who's in my shoes would have done these same things. So now I'm going to be gentle with myself. It's okay. My anxiety is not me. My depression is not me. We are distinct from each other. And so in trying to attack the depression or this apathy that I'm experiencing, I'm not going to attack myself at the same time. And for me, that's usually the clicking point for me being able to get out of times like that, when I stop turning on myself and start turning on the actual enemy. So now I want to get into the second type. And the second type I'm calling the reactor. And it's not this necessarily linear, you might skip level 1 and go straight to level 3, or you're a little bit of a mix of both. There's some fluidity here. But for this reactor, this is a person who they're not in the apathetic phase where they're kind of lethargic and doing nothing. This person is doing stuff, but this person feels a little behind. So the emotions that this person's feeling is more overwhelmed. They're feeling kind of anxious. They're feeling they've got like a lot of things to juggle. They kind of let hope awaken. Like I think with that level 1, the issue is that hope has kind of died. And with this person, they've said, okay, I want to do this and I want to do this. And they've kind of awakened to their desires and things that they like, but they don't know how to juggle all those things. When they awaken to all those desires, then they realized, wow, there's a lot of things that I want to do. I want to be on top of my chores, and I want to have fun, and I want to have friends. And it's starting to feel like a lot that they're juggling. So this is when you kind of first start seeing a need for time management. So for the people in this level, maybe they've got school and they're juggling chores and you got all this stuff. And a lot of times I'll get in this type of stage when I've got a big event coming up. Like I was thinking like when I was planning a wedding, or maybe you got finals coming up, or I typically find myself in this reactive mode when all of a sudden the amount of tasks is bigger than my capacity. Now over time you get better and better with time management, and you can increase your capacity. It's kind of like building a muscle for what you can handle and still maintain organized. But when you're down at this level 2, you start feeling like you're juggling too much and you can't contain it. So I actually do have a video about feeling overwhelmed, which I guess I'll link here from a few years ago. It's pretty old about the quality, but it came from a time of me feeling overwhelmed and what I did. So what I did is I just did a brain dump, like a big vomit of all my tasks basically. And I put them each on a different sticky note because that's what I was needing at the time. So I kind of vomited everything. Here's all my tasks. And then I sorted them by when they needed to be done. Do they need to be done today? Do they need to be done tomorrow? Do they need to be done the next day? And a lot of times the kind of procrastination will kind of lead to this, will kind of necessitate this. And that's okay. I know I find that for people in this reactive stage, sometimes they're oscillating between level 1 and level 2. They're kind of like doing nothing and then, dang, I procrastinated, got a lot of stuff to do. And they're kind of going back and forth. So initially you probably won't be able to pare down very much, but that's what ultimately needs to happen, to slowly begin saying no to things. So if you've heard of like the 80-20 principle, I want to give an application of that. And it's basically that 20% of the things you do provide 80% of the results. So like one thing that I did this year is I did a calendar audit, and I wrote down I was looking at every single thing I had done this year. A lot of them repeat, and I was sorting them between do I love this thing? This is bringing me joy. I absolutely love this thing. One thing that I heard was things are either a hell yes or they're a hell no. So when you look at something and how does it make you feel? Does it make you yes, or does it make you maybe? If it's a maybe, it's a no. So at this point, you have to really pare down because we want the richness, the density. We don't want the quantity of things, but the quality of things in life. And so what I recommend for this step is, if you didn't already do it in step 1, is just to spend a week tracking your time. And I'll have a template in the description where you want to see where exactly is your time going. Because if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, it's because you are extending beyond your capacity. So your options are to raise your capacity, which That's a very slow process, and that happens over many years and over a lot of organization. But the faster thing in the short term is to pare down so that it's not overextending you. So at this step, what I want these people to do is I want you to get a calendar. Now, a lot of times people get, especially in this phase, they've got kind of information overload. And information overload is a big thing that causes anxiety. So you've heard of the Pareto principle and Parkinson's law. Okay, we got all these principles, and what do we do? And then I could use Todoist, or I could use Notion, or I could use, Sensama, or, Trello, all these different tools. So it's not about the tools. It's about just the simple basics. So the only thing I want you to do is I want you to pick one place where you will store things. One calendar or one planner or one Google calendar, but not multiple. Not spread over multiple things for task management. So if you are in school and you take notes or something, if it were me, I would do pen and paper in a notebook, and then I would have one little calendar. But notes and tasks are kind of separate things. And the number one thing that you have to develop at this phase is the commitment to your calendar, or honoring your calendar. The point of the calendar is so that you can be the designer of your life. You're the architect of your life. You're drafting the blueprint, how you want things to go. And I'll get into best practices a couple levels up, like what do you do if the day goes wrong, or should you use time blocking or different things. But the basics at this level is not to get into time blocking or anything too crazy. If you don't have the habit of just writing the basics down on a calendar and looking at it regularly, that's what you got to do first. The point of having the date with your calendar is so that you're regularly reviewing, so that that design that you made for your life is actually being created and transformed into reality, because time is reality. So you lay your best plans for time, which is reality. And when you look at it regularly, then it will come into reality. So the number one thing you need to implement is paring down at this level and reviewing how you designed your time so that you can live that rich life. So the third level is all about getting stable and creating systems. So at the previous level, level 2, you're reacting to all these things as they're coming. You're kind of in a reactive, overwhelmed frame. So you're kind of behind the 8 ball. This is about getting stable, getting to a neutral position where things are stable. You have your routines, you have your systems, and things are good. You can reliably trust yourself. Things are calm, things are stable. It's not particularly sexy or anything, but it's stable. Things are under control. You're not putting out fires all the time. So at this level, you want to create systems for all of the boring things in your life. I think that one of the biggest enemies of good task management is all of the chores in life, or at least that's been my experience, that I want to do all these things with my goals and do all this fun stuff, but counterintuitively, you kind of have to, if you've got fires to put out, you have to put those fires out first before you can really launch into that dream life. So this level is all about just getting stable and dealing with the boring stuff. So do you have a laundry routine? Basically, every Tuesday, I do my laundry at noon. I just have this regular schedule. Every day, I get dinner ready at 4. If you want to see my meal planning system, I'll have that video linked here. Or twice a month, I do my budgeting system, and I have that video linked here. So I just have systems for things that's like, every Tuesday I do this at this time. Every day I do this at this time. And so it's kind of the adulting part of it. It's getting, your routines all systematized. It's boring. It's an absolutely boring, non-sexy foundation, but that's what you need so that you can do all your creative work. You don't want to reinvent the wheel every week with these chores, because you want to save that creativity and that reinvention for the things you're actually working on, things you're actually passionate about, things you actually care about. So basically, for all the boring tasks in your life, you're going to create a routine for them, and those are going to get put on the calendar. So at this stage, instead of using your calendar just for appointments, which is kind of like that level 2, anything you would have typically put on a to-do list, that's what's going to get on the calendar. So it's a transition from putting events on the calendar to putting actions on the calendar. So for this, I like to engage in a modified time blocking. I would say I time block to about 60%, because your days never go as planned, and sometimes you have this whole time blocked thing, and then it's like dominoes, and then if one doesn't fall, then they all don't fall, and then it's all messed up. So you need plenty of buffer time, especially if you've determined that you're kind of a bad judge of time. Like if you feel like you're a bad judge of time and you know that about yourself, which you can find out over experimentation, just double it. If you think it would take 30 minutes, double it, and it'll take an hour. And then give yourself some wiggle room. Only time blocking like 60% of your day, so there's plenty of gaps. So at this phase, you're not only putting in appointments on the calendar, but you're also putting all of your routines on the calendar. And I like to put this on the monthly spread. And the reason that you're doing this is so that you can get stable with all the boring stuff, so that we can launch into creating a beautiful dream life. So level 4 about time management is all about getting ahead. So in the previous level, you got kind of stable. You're not putting out fires anymore. You've got control over maybe your routines or your kids' routines. Kind of the routines are stable, the chores are stable, but you want to start getting ahead. You don't just want to use your calendar, put the tasks and stuff on the calendar, but you actually want to start building that dream life. You don't want to just be putting out fires, but you actually want to start the creation process. So this is someone that maybe as an appointment comes to them, they put it down, and then they just always know they have their routines going, so that's put down. So at this stage, this is where you need to start adding in some growth things. So this is where I would add in a monthly planning routine and a weekly planning routine. And at this point, you should already just be checking your planner daily. That was one of the previous steps. So at this stage, you're adding in a monthly and a weekly planning routine. I would say that both the weekly and the monthly planning routines take about half an hour, and I treat them as a ritual to really sit down with my planner and make sure that I'm creating and the designer of my life so that my life feels rich, because, we're the only ones who are responsible for our lives. We're the only ones who know what we want our ideal life to look like. So we want to actually create that thing. So what I do is anytime I realize I have an appointment or I think of something that I want to do, I write that down on the monthly spread of my planner. I see this as kind of my monthly messy dashboard, and it's the messy brain dump, and I would rather my planner be messy than my mind be messy. So this is part of like the getting things done system, where they say that you need to use your mind to think about things, not of things. Like you want to think of creative things. You don't want to be spending it thinking of tasks. So anytime you think of something, immediately put it on kind of the monthly messy dashboard. And it'll be messy. There's a lot of stuff going in there because there's a lot of things that we're juggling at this point. We have routines and we have chores and we have our goals. And so we are juggling a lot because we want to have this rich life, but we don't want to feel like we're juggling a lot. So you put it on the monthly dashboard. Some things might change. You might cross things off. It's okay. It's totally messy. And I leave the weekly spreads blank until I get to weekly planning. So every Sunday night, I flip to that beautiful blank page and I just take everything that I had on the monthly dashboard for that week, and then I can kind of beautify it, organize it, reevaluate, were there things I put there that are no longer the case? And I just loosely put things in, I'm time block about 60% that I would say. And then I show up to my planner every day. I still have that daily planning routine where I can fill in things more specifically. Okay, so in the morning, I wanted to do X, but now that I'm actually here at this day, I can figure out, okay, I actually want that to be from 9 to 10 exactly. Like when exactly in the morning do I want that to be? And this is a great level to bring in other collaborators. So do you have team members? Like, are you the manager of a team? Do you have like a spouse that you want to collaborate with? Basically just other people that you want to loop in on this thing. So it's a great time to weekly plan, to monthly plan with that other person, and just to clarify the vision. Hey, I want to do monthly planning and weekly planning so that we can be ahead of things, so that we're not just stable, but then we can actually create our dreams and be a little more proactive about the life that we want to live, so that we can like spend more time with our kids and have more time with our hobbies. If we're intentional, it's kind of like packing a suitcase. If we're intentional about the way we pack that suitcase, we can fit more stuff in. And so that's what I want. I want a dense, rich life of the things that are a priority to me without the things that are not a priority to me. And the whole point of getting stable in the previous step with those routines was so they don't take very much time. They're the boring stuff. We don't want the boring stuff to take a lot of time. We don't want to reinvent the wheel with the boring routines. We want to minimize that time by systematizing it so that we can maximize the time for the things we really care about. And the reason I have monthly and weekly planning routines and daily planning routines is you need the monthly level, the bigger chunk of time, so that you can set goals. You can set goals for the month, really vision, have a bird's eye view. Where do I want to be? But you also need to get down to the nitty-gritty of the daily level so that you can reevaluate, because some of the things that we set in at the beginning of the month, those aren't true later on toward the end of the month. We realize things change. And so we have multiple planning routines so that we can reevaluate. Just because we set a plan at the beginning of the month doesn't mean that there weren't unforeseen constraints or there was unexpected events. So, this is real life. This is not planning for robots. This is people that have unexpected things that come up, that you were motivated one day, you weren't motivated one day. You dip down to level 1 at some point that week, it's okay. So we want to have a system that allows for the fact that we're not perfect. We set our monthly goals at the beginning of the month, and then as time goes, we need to, at the weekly level, keep reevaluating. Do we need to set a new plan? And also at the daily level, do I need to reevaluate based on things that happened? So now we're at the 5th level, where we're not at the 1st level, which means we don't really have anything going on. We're not at the 2nd level, which means we've got stuff going on, but we're reacting to it and feeling overwhelmed. We're not at the next level, which is we're stable. We're not behind the 8 ball like level 2. We're kind of stable. At level 4, we got ahead a little bit. Not super long term, but a month in advance, we got a little ahead. So now the 5th level is where you really start thinking about more long-range planning. And this is where you start seeing your time as like an investment, kind of like how you see money as investment. When you get to like a higher level with money, then you're not just kind of like behind, putting out fires, but you're actually seeing things as an investment. So you're putting in a little bit of work for a long-term investment. So this is where I get into my whole time funnel. So if you're familiar with my time funnel, you have these different delineations of time. You've got the year, the quarter, the month, the week, and the days, and the hours. And so I have routines for all of these. routines. I've got yearly planning routines, quarterly planning, monthly, weekly, and daily planning. So as you get more and more sophisticated, you can kind of expand out the level of time management. A lot of times people see time management as just for the days or just for the week, but this is yearly time management, really having a bird's eye view. So what I do is at every single level, I look at the level I'm at. So like if I'm quarterly planning, I kind of review the quarter. Then I go a level up and look at what were my yearly goals. Then I go a level down and I set monthly benchmarks for myself. And I have a Dream Funnel playlist all about this if you want to get more into like how I do each of my planning routines. But the point of this is to readjust regularly. So you need to do the top level planning so that you have a target. Because if you throw a dart at nothing, you're going to hit nothing. So you need to have a target, but we're not robots, we're real people. Sometimes we're not motivated, sometimes stuff happens. So we need to regularly reevaluate because maybe we didn't estimate properly, maybe there was a life event that we didn't expect that was going to happen. So if we said, okay, this is where I want to be by the end of quarter one. Okay, now that things are happening, now that it's February, that's not looking realistic. So we readjust. So we need lots of opportunities for readjustment, which is why I also have monthly planning and weekly planning. And I would say, these don't take very long. This is just, it's a ritual. And I like to see myself as kind of like the artist or the designer of my life. And if you're familiar with the Eisenhower matrix, there's the category where things are important but not urgent. And that's what planning really speaks to, are these things that are not urgent. Because a lot of times the lower levels, when you're filling things in a calendar, you're just like, oh, someone told me that I had an appointment. Okay, so I'm going to write it down. So as things come to you, you're writing it down. And that's kind of the basics of a calendar. But now if you want to be like the leader and take more initiative, being the creator of your life, you have to see these things when no one brought them to your attention. You're the leader. So it's your responsibility to kind of spend time with yourself, visioning, where do I want to be? Where do I want to take my family? Where do I want to take my team? How do I want things to be? And so you vision out for a longer period of time and reevaluate regularly so that those things actually happen. So it's at this point that I think you have things under control, things are relatively stable, and you're feeling kind of like, okay, I'm feeling kind of bored. Like I really want to stretch myself. This is where you add in a passion project. And I like to think of it as like the 5-hour rule. You get to a point where you've systematized things and you've upped your capacity for what you can handle, and you've minimized the amount of time that things take that you don't really care about, like routines. And so you've really expanded more time by saying no to these other things. You've created more time so you can say yes to this passion project or this hobbies or spending time with your kids. I use the term passion project very loosely. And so you could spend, spending 5 hours on that thing. Like to me, I think spending 5 hours a week in the morning is one of the best things that I ever did. When I was teaching, I had to be at work at 7. And so from 6 to 7 a.m. every morning, I was at a coffee shop working on my YouTube channel. And I spent 5 hours per week total making 2 videos. So that was on average 2.5 hours per video. I was just working on it by myself. And I have videos that got hundreds of thousands of views from that time period. And I only spent that much time. And I think at the beginning, you really just need to get going and put in some hours and, minimum viable product. Ideally, you don't want to spend 2.5 hours only on a YouTube video, but, I got the job done and things really started moving the needle. So that's something that I think has really changed my life. And so it's this part, you're putting in a little bit of an investment, like it was some short-term work. I feel like I had 3 or so years of really investing with little return and then getting a lot of return. But even so, even though externally there wasn't that much of a return, the process was so rewarding to be the type, I just felt myself expanding. I felt that I was becoming a better communicator. I felt that I was making better videos. And the process of expanding is just so enlivening. And I think that as you go up the levels of this ladder, 1 through 5, you start feeling yourself go from shrinking and constricting and feeling, sad or apathetic. There's this feeling of expansion. The further and further you go up, your time really is becoming more and more rich. And so I just want to reiterate that time management, it's not about doing more or doing more of the stuff that you don't like or being able to just grin and bear it with all this discipline. It's about doing more of what you like and expanding the time allotted to what you do like and minimizing the time on the things that you do like. So that, there's things a lot of people ask me, like, how do you be more disciplined? The way that you get rid of the need to be more disciplined is you expand the time on things you like to do, and it requires no discipline to do those things. You just like to do them. And the things you don't like to do, you minimize the amount of time they take, you minimize the amount of friction. I don't like doing laundry, I don't like cooking, I don't like that stuff. So I've minimized the amount of time that stuff takes. I don't reinvent the wheel, I got the same boring system every week. That's level 3. So that I've now allotted for all this time over here to do the stuff that I'm really passionate about. So I mentioned earlier about my time management funnel and how I have my daily and weekly and monthly and quarterly and yearly planning routines. So check out this playlist right here where I go in depth about how to do each of those things so that you can create and design your life without feeling like you have to get it all right the first time. You can pivot along the way.